The Council's secret prison, deep in the heart of the Galactic Council's capital, a massive, impenetrable prison floated in orbit. Its dark, metallic surface gleamed under the cold light of distant stars. This was not just any prison. It was where the Council sent its most dangerous enemies. Inside, silence was often broken by screams, a cruel reminder of what happened to those who dared to defy the Council. In one of the cold, dimly lit cells, a young human girl sat chained to the wall. Her clothes were torn, and her face was pale, bruised, and hollow from days without food. Yet her eyes burned with defiance. She was not just any prisoner. She was a symbol of Earth's resistance, a planet the Council thought it had tamed long ago. The guards, towering alien creatures with sharp claws and cruel smiles, passed by her cell, sneering. One of them stopped and peered inside. "Still alive, little human," the guard hissed, its voice a chilling mix of mockery and menace. "You should have stayed quiet. Now your screams will echo through the stars." The girl looked up, her lips cracked but curled into a faint smile. She whispered something, too quiet for the guard to hear. "What did you say?" The alien growled, stepping closer. Her voice, weak but steady, became clearer. "Earth will rise." The guard snarled, slamming its claws against the bars. "Your Earth is weak. Your people are cowards. No one is coming for you." But the girl's expression didn't change. That faint smile remained, as if she knew something they didn't. Far away on the quiet surface of Earth, a hidden resistance base received a faint transmission. The signal was barely readable, scrambled by distance and interference. The resistance leader, a sharp-eyed man named Marcus, leaned over the console. "Can you clean it up?" he asked the technician. "I'll try," the woman replied, her fingers flying across the keyboard. After a few tense moments, the static cleared, and a single weak voice came through. "This is Kara, prisoner, Council torture chambers." The message broke off, then resumed with more urgency. "Coordinates, old cryo facility. Revive them. Earth's only hope." The transmission ended abruptly. "Who is Kara?" a young resistance fighter asked, his voice trembling. "She was one of our best operatives," Marcus said grimly. "If she sent this message, it means the Council's onto something big. And if she mentioned the cryo facility..." His voice trailed off, and his eyes darkened. "What's at the cryo facility?" Marcus took a deep breath before answering. "Legends, the last of Earth's super soldiers. They were put into cryo-sleep centuries ago, after the Great Wars. We thought we'd never need them again." Back at the prison, Kara's condition worsened. The guards had grown tired of her defiance. She was dragged from her cell and taken to the interrogation room, where bright lights and sharp tools awaited. The Council's torturers surrounded her, their alien forms casting long, menacing shadows on the walls. "You will tell us everything," one of them said, its voice a low growl. But Kara laughed, a weak but defiant sound. "You think pain will break me? I've already won." The torturers exchanged confused glances. "You'll see," Kara whispered, her voice filled with a mix of pain and triumph. "Earth remembers, and Earth never forgets." The resistance team, now aware of Kara's sacrifice, mobilized quickly. They had no choice but to trust her final message. The coordinates led them to a remote mountain range, long abandoned and forgotten by most. Hidden beneath the rocky surface was an ancient base, sealed with layers of reinforced steel. The entrance bore a faded insignia, a pair of crossed swords surrounded by stars, the mark of Earth's elite warriors. "Is it true?" one fighter asked as they cut through the lock. "Are there really soldiers in there?" Marcus nodded. If the stories are true, these soldiers were stronger, faster, and smarter than anything the galaxy has ever seen. But they were too dangerous, even for Earth. That's why they were put to sleep. If we wake them now... He hesitated. "They might be our only hope," another fighter finished. The massive door groaned open, revealing a long, dark hallway lined with stasis pods. Inside each pod was a figure, perfectly preserved, their faces calm but their forms imposing. "Activate the first pod," Marcus ordered. The technician hesitated. "Are you sure? We don't know if they'll even listen to us." "We don't have a choice," Marcus replied firmly. The pod hissed as it opened, releasing a cloud of icy mist. The figure inside stirred, eyes opening slowly. A man stepped out, his towering frame covered in scars from past battles. His piercing gaze scanned the room, landing on Marcus. "Who are you?" The man demanded, his voice deep and commanding. "My name is Marcus," the resistance leader replied. "Earth needs you." The soldier's eyes narrowed. "What year is it?" "Far too many since you last fought," Marcus said. "But the war never ended. The Council has taken everything from us. They've tortured our people. They've enslaved our worlds." The soldier's expression hardened. "Then it's time for Earth to fight back." As Kara sat in her cell, battered but unbroken, she felt a flicker of hope. She didn't need to see the awakening to know it had begun. Deep inside, she knew her message had reached the right people. The Galactic Council had no idea what they had just unleashed. Earth's hidden cryo chambers. The ancient mountain base loomed before the resistance fighters like a relic of another time. Jagged peaks surrounded it, shrouded in mist, as if nature itself wanted to keep its secrets hidden. Snow crunched under their boots as they approached the massive steel door etched with warnings in faded lettering. "Do not disturb. Humanity's last weapon lies here." Marcus stepped forward, holding the datapad with the coordinates Kara had sent. He hesitated for a moment, his fingers grazing the weathered metal. "What if they're more dangerous than the Council?" A young fighter named Sarah whispered, her breath fogging in the icy air. "They were made to protect us," Marcus replied, though his voice carried doubt. "And right now, we have no choice." Inside the mountain, the air was cold and stale, as if it hadn't been touched by life in centuries. The group's flashlights cut through the darkness, illuminating corridors lined with cracked walls and forgotten machinery. Finally, they entered a vast chamber. Dozens of towering stasis pods stood in neat rows, each one encasing a human figure. The pods glowed faintly, their surfaces etched with identification codes. Sarah stepped closer to one pod, staring at the face inside. The man was huge, his muscles taut even in sleep. His face was rugged, a scar running from his temple to his jaw. She shivered, not from the cold, but from the sheer intensity of his presence. "Are they alive?" she asked. "Alive," Marcus confirmed, "but frozen in time. These are Earth's super soldiers, created in secret centuries ago during the Great Galactic War. They were too powerful, too dangerous. When the war ended, humanity decided to put them into cryo-sleep, in case we ever needed them again. And now we need them," Sarah murmured. Marcus nodded grimly. "Activate the first pod." The technician hesitated, her hands hovering over the ancient console. "I don't know if the system will even work after all these years," she warned. "Just do it," Marcus urged. The console sparked to life, its ancient mechanisms groaning as the first pod hissed open. A blast of icy mist filled the chamber, and then the figure inside stirred. The man's eyes snapped open, piercing blue, cold and calculating. He stepped out of the pod, towering over the group. His movements were deliberate, as if testing his strength after centuries of stillness. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice deep and commanding. "I'm Marcus, leader of Earth's resistance." Marcus replied, his tone steady despite the soldier's intimidating presence. The man's eyes narrowed. "Resistance? What happened to Earth's government? The Council treaties?" "They're gone," Marcus said bluntly. "The Council enslaved Earth generations ago. They've taken everything from us, tortured our people, enslaved others. They thought we were finished." The soldier's expression darkened, his fists clenching. "What year is it?" Marcus told him, and the soldier's jaw tightened. Sentries, the man muttered, his voice laced with anger. They let the council take over. Cowards. Marcus stepped forward, undeterred by the soldier's growing rage. We woke you because we need you. One of our operatives, Kara, was captured and tortured by the council. She sent us a message before they silenced her, a message to find you. At the mention of Kara, the soldier's icy demeanor shifted slightly. A name, he said quietly. That's all I need to fight. Commander Alex Kane, Marcus said, addressing him formally. Are you ready to fight for Earth again? Alex Kane straightened, his towering frame casting a shadow over the resistance fighters. Earth never stops fighting. Let's wake the others. As more pods were activated, the chamber came alive with the hiss of escaping mist and the heavy steps of awakening soldiers. Each one was a legend, their faces as hard as stone, their eyes sharp and calculating. The air grew thick with their presence, a palpable reminder of humanity's once unmatched strength. One soldier, a woman with fiery red hair and a jagged scar across her neck, stepped forward. Who woke us? She demanded. Earth's resistance, Marcus replied, standing his ground. The woman smirked. Bold move, waking sleeping giants. Another soldier, a hulking man with arms like tree trunks, grunted. If we're awake, it means things are worse than we thought. They are, Marcus confirmed. The Council controls the galaxy. They've turned Earth into a shadow of what it once was. They think we're weak. They think humanity has forgotten how to fight. The soldiers exchanged glances, their expressions grim but resolute. Alex Kane stepped forward, addressing his team. The Council broke our people while we slept. They think they've won. But they made one mistake. They left us alive. The room fell silent, the weight of his words settling over everyone. Outside the mountain, Council drones buzzed through the sky, scanning for signs of life. The Resistance's location had been compromised. We've got company, Sarah warned, watching the drones from a narrow window. Alex Kane smirked. Let's see if I'm still as good as I was. He grabbed a rifle from a nearby weapons locker, its design outdated but functional. The other soldiers followed suit, their movements quick and precise despite centuries of inactivity. The drones hovered closer, their mechanical whirring growing louder. Alex aimed, his finger hovering over the trigger. Watch and learn, he said, firing a single shot. The drone exploded in a fiery blaze, scattering debris across the snowy ground. The soldiers moved like a well-oiled machine, their precision and strength unmatched. Within minutes, the drones were nothing more than smoldering wreckage. Marcus watched in awe. This is just the beginning, he said softly. Alex turned to him, his eyes fierce. You're right. The Council took Earth's future. Now we take it back. Far away, in the Galactic Council's capital, alarms blared. Unusual activity detected on Earth, a monitor reported. An alien overlord narrowed its eyes. Activate the fleet. Whatever is happening on that primitive planet, it ends now. But deep in the mountain, Earth's legends were awake, and they were ready. Awakening the army. The mountain base was alive with activity. The once forgotten cryo chambers were now buzzing as Earth's ancient super soldiers awoke, one after another. Each soldier that stepped out of the pods added to the growing sense of purpose in the room. These were not ordinary humans. They were weapons honed to perfection, designed for wars Earth had long forgotten. Commander Alex Kane stood at the head of the chamber, watching as the last pod opened. A man emerged, his eyes scanning the room with the sharpness of a predator. His build was lean but powerful, his movements fluid like a predator stalking prey. What's the situation, Commander? The man asked, his voice calm but carrying a dangerous edge. We've been asleep for centuries, Mason, Kane replied. The Council rules the galaxy. Earth is in chains. We're the last chance humanity has. Mason's lips curled into a dark grin. Good. I was starting to get bored. The Resistance's gamble. As the soldiers familiarized themselves with their new surroundings, the Resistance fighters worked to restore the mountain base's dormant systems. Marcus and Sarah watched in awe as the soldiers quickly adapted, their reflexes and instincts sharper than anyone they'd ever seen. "They're not just strong," Sarah whispered. "They're unstoppable." Marcus nodded. "And they're exactly what we need." The super soldiers gathered in the central command room. Alex Kane stood at the center, a holographic display of the galaxy flickering before him. He pointed to Earth, marked with red as a controlled zone. "We have intel from the Resistance that Kara, the operative who sent the message, was taken to the Council's capital," Kane began. "She's not just a prisoner. She's the key to turning the tide. She knows the Council's weak points." A soldier named Red, a tall woman with short cropped hair and a jagged scar running across her face, spoke up. "What's the plan?" "Storm the Council capital with what little we have." "Sounds like a suicide mission." "It's not suicide if we win," Mason interjected, his voice dripping with confidence. Kane raised a hand to silence them. "We're not going to the capital yet. First, we build an army." He turned to Marcus. "The Resistance has more cells, right?" Marcus nodded. "Scattered across Earth. But they don't have much. Small arms, a few ships, nothing compared to the Council's fleets." "They won't need much," Kane said with a smirk. "They'll have us." The awakening spreads. The next step of the plan was risky. The soldiers, guided by Resistance fighters, split into teams to find and awaken other cryo chambers hidden across the planet. These chambers were scattered in remote locations, each housing a piece of Earth's forgotten army. Red's team was the first to reach their target, a chamber buried beneath a desert wasteland. The entrance was guarded by a Council outpost, but the soldiers made quick work of it. Red moved like a shadow, silent and deadly, while her team provided cover. Inside the chamber, more stasis pods waited, their occupants preserved in icy sleep. Red activated the system, watching as frost melted away to reveal more legends. One of the newly awakened soldiers, a towering figure named Grim, stepped out of his pod. He looked at Red and cracked his knuckles. "I hope there's a fight waiting for us." "There's always a fight," Red replied with a smirk. "The Council's alarm." Meanwhile, in the Galactic Council's capital, panic spread among the ruling members. Surveillance reports showed unusual activity across Earth. More drones had been destroyed, and faint energy readings indicated the activation of ancient technology. "This cannot be possible," hissed one alien, its elongated face twisting in frustration. "Earth's primitive kind should be incapable of such coordination." A senior council member, taller and more menacing than the others, leaned forward. "Primitive or not, their kind has always been dangerous when cornered. Increase patrols. Dispatch warships to the planet." Another member spoke, their voice trembling. "Do you think it's true? The stories of their super soldiers." The senior member's eyes narrowed. "If those monsters have awakened, we must crush them before they regain their full strength." A test of strength. Back on Earth, Kane led a team to a Council-controlled facility that housed a key resource, a weapons cache from the old wars. The facility was heavily guarded, but Kane had a plan. "Hit them fast and hard," he said, briefing his team. "We're not here for a prolonged fight. In and out." The team moved with precision, eliminating guards with swift, brutal efficiency. Kane himself was a force of nature, his combat instincts razor-sharp. He took down an entire squad of alien guards in seconds, his movements a blur of lethal strikes. As they breached the facility, the soldiers discovered more than just weapons. "These aren't just old Earth weapons," Mason said, examining a crate. "These are prototypes, things we never got to use in the war." "Good," Kane said, picking up a sleek experimental rifle. "Let's see how the Council likes a taste of our old tech." A growing threat. The Council's forces arrived sooner than expected. Warships descended on the mountain base, their massive cannons firing plasma bursts that shook the ground. The resistance fighters scrambled to defend the base, but it was the super soldiers who turned the tide. They moved like phantoms, taking down enemy troops with brutal efficiency. Kane and his team operated as if they were one mind, their teamwork flawless. When the dust settled, the resistance stared in awe at the destruction. Dozens of council troops lay defeated, their advanced technology no match for the soldiers' raw power and skill. "That was just a warm-up," Mason said, wiping blood from his blade. Kane turned to Marcus. "Now you see what we're capable of. Spread the word. Tell every resistance cell to rise up. We're taking Earth back." The Council's desperation. In the Galactic Council's capital, the senior member received the latest report. Their forces on Earth were being overwhelmed, not by numbers, but by something far worse: humanity's legends. "They're awake," the senior member said grimly. "The super soldiers are awake." A tense silence filled the room. "What do we do?" another member asked. The senior member's eyes gleamed with a mix of fear and resolve. "We do what we should have done centuries ago. We unleash the exterminators." Earth's awakening had begun, but the galaxy's darkest weapons were about to be revealed. The war was no longer about survival, it was about revenge. The Council's retaliation. The Galactic Council wasted no time. A fleet of warships, sleek and deadly, launched from their capital, heading straight for Earth. These ships were not just machines. They were symbols of the Council's iron grip on the galaxy. Each vessel bristled with weapons powerful enough to level cities in a single strike. In the Council's grand chamber, the senior member stood before a massive holographic map of Earth, his elongated face twisted in anger. "They think they can resist us," he growled, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Let them taste the full wrath of the Council. Deploy the exterminator units to Earth. Leave no survivors in their resistance strongholds." A younger counselor hesitated. "But the super soldiers? They are relics of a forgotten time," the senior member snapped. "We will remind humanity why they bowed to us in the first place." The battle begins. On Earth, in the hidden mountain base, alarms blared. The Resistance's scanners picked up the incoming fleet. Marcus and the Resistance fighters stared at the holographic display, their faces pale. "There's no way we can fight that," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. "We don't have to," Alex Kane said, stepping forward, his voice calm and steady. "Not yet." The super soldiers had gathered in the command room, their imposing presence filling the space. Kane's eyes flicked over the display, analyzing the fleet's formation. "They're arrogant," Kane said. "They're not expecting resistance strong enough to hurt them. That's our advantage." Mason grinned, tapping the edge of his blade against the table. "What's the plan, Commander?" Kane pointed to key locations on the map. "They're targeting our known resistance outposts. We'll split into teams, hit their supply lines, disrupt their communications, and force them to spread their forces thin. This isn't about holding ground. It's about making them bleed." Team Red strike. Red led a team to one of the Council's forward bases in a ruined city. The area had been abandoned for years, its crumbling buildings a testament to the Council's dominance. The soldiers moved silently through the shadows, their movements precise and calculated. Red raised a fist, signaling her team to stop. Ahead, a squad of Council troops guarded a relay station, their strange, insectoid forms clicking and hissing as they scanned the area. Red whispered into her comm, "Take them out, fast and quiet." The team moved like ghosts. Within seconds, the guards were down, their weapons disabled, their bodies lifeless. Red planted explosives on the relay station, her fingers moving deftly over the controls. "Charges set," she said. "On to the next target." As they slipped away, the station erupted in a massive explosion, sending a plume of fire and debris into the sky. Mason's ambush. Meanwhile, Mason and his team intercepted a Council supply convoy moving through a dense forest. The convoy's sleek hovercrafts hummed as they glided over the terrain, their guards alert but unaware of the danger lurking in the trees. Mason crouched in the underbrush, a smirk on his face. "Showtime," he muttered, signaling his team. The ambush was swift and brutal. Soldiers dropped from the trees, taking out guards before they could react. Mason leaped onto one of the hovercrafts, his blade slicing through its pilot with deadly precision. The convoy was reduced to smoldering wreckage within minutes. Mason wiped blood from his blade, grinning at his team. Easy pickings. The Council's counterattack. The Council's exterminator units arrived soon after. These were no ordinary soldiers. They were biomechanical nightmares, towering machines with organic cores, designed to hunt and destroy without mercy. One of the units descended on a resistance outpost in a barren wasteland. The exterminator was a hulking figure, its metallic limbs crackling with energy, its red eyes scanning for targets. The resistance fighters stood no chance. Plasma blasts tore through their defenses, and the exterminator moved with terrifying speed, dismantling everything in its path. News of the attack reached the mountain base. Marcus stared at the screen in horror as the outpost's signal went dark. "We can't fight those things," he said, his voice shaking. "Yes, we can," Kane replied, his tone resolute. "We just need to change the rules." The super soldiers stand. Kane's team intercepted the exterminator unit before it could reach another outpost. The battlefield was a desolate stretch of land, littered with the remains of long-forgotten wars. The exterminator stood in the center, its red eyes glowing menacingly. "Human resistance detected," it announced in a cold, mechanical voice. "Eliminating target." Kane smirked, raising his rifle. "Let's see you try." The battle was brutal. The exterminator's energy blasts tore through the air, but the super soldiers were faster. They moved as one, using their superior reflexes and teamwork to outmaneuver the machine. Red's sharpshooting disabled its targeting systems, while Mason's blade cut through its armor. Kane delivered the final blow, a grenade planted deep within the exterminator's core. The machine exploded in a blinding flash of light, its pieces raining down around them. The Council's realization. In the Council's grand chamber, the senior member watched the footage of the exterminator's defeat, his expression grim. "They're adapting," he said. "These soldiers, they are not like the humans we conquered." "What do we do now?" another counselor asked, fear evident in their voice. The senior member's eyes gleamed with cold resolve. "We escalate. Deploy the dreadnought. If Earth's warriors want a war, we'll give them one they cannot survive." Earth's super soldiers had won the first round, but the Council's ultimate weapon was now on its way. The war was far from over, and humanity's fight for freedom was only just beginning. The girl's secret. The Galactic Council's retaliation left scars across Earth, but the resistance stood firm, bolstered by the victories of the awakened super soldiers. Yet amidst the chaos, one haunting question lingered. Why had Kara risked everything to send that message? In the mountain base's medbay, Kara lay motionless. Her body was broken, evidence of the Council's cruelty etched into every bruise and scar. A medical scanner blinked softly, monitoring her fragile condition. "She hasn't woken up since we found her," Marcus said, his voice low. "She will," Alex Kane replied. He stood at the foot of her bed, his arms crossed. "She didn't survive the Council's torture, just to fade away now." A fragment of memory. That night, as the base hummed with quiet activity, Kara stirred. Her eyelids fluttered, and her cracked lips moved, forming words too faint to hear. Red was the first to notice. She leaned closer, her scared face softened by concern. "Kara," she said gently, "you're safe now. You're with us." Kara's eyes snapped open, filled with panic. "No," she gasped. "It's not just about Earth." Red grabbed her hand, trying to calm her. "What do you mean? What's not about Earth?" Kara's breathing steadied as her gaze locked onto Red's. "The Council? They're hiding something. It's bigger than us. Bigger than Earth." Kara's revelation. The resistance leaders gathered in the command room the next day. Kara, weak but determined, was brought in. Her frail frame seemed out of place among the towering super-soldiers, but her voice carried a weight that silenced the room. "When the council took me," she began, her voice hoarse, "I wasn't just a prisoner. I overheard things, secrets they never meant for us to know." She pointed to the holographic map of the galaxy. "The council isn't just enslaving Earth. They've subjugated dozens of worlds, each one stripped of its resources, its people turned into laborers or worse. But that's not the worst part." "What could be worse than that?" Mason asked, leaning forward. Kara's eyes darkened. "They're building something. A weapon. Something that can wipe out entire planets in seconds. They call it Project Eradicator." The room fell silent. "Do you know where it is?" Kane asked, his voice calm but deadly serious. Kara nodded weakly. "The Council's capital. But it's heavily guarded. No one's ever breached it and lived to tell the tale." A glimmer of hope. The revelation sent a ripple of unease through the resistance, but Kane stood firm. "If what Kara says is true, we don't have a choice. If that weapon comes online, Earth, and every other enslaved world, is finished." Red folded her arms. "So what's the plan?" "Storm the Council capital with a handful of soldiers." Kane's eyes gleamed with determination. "Not yet. We hit them where it hurts first. We'll free one of their slave worlds and turn its people into allies. If we can show the galaxy that the Council isn't invincible, they'll rise with us." "Which planet?" Marcus asked. Kara took a deep breath, summoning her strength. "Varian 6. It's the Council's largest slave colony. If we free it, the galaxy will take notice." The rescue mission. The journey to Varian 6 was perilous. The planet was a fortress, its skies patrolled by Council warships, and its surface monitored by endless waves of drones. But the super-soldiers thrived under pressure. Kane led the team, their stolen Council shuttle slipping past the patrols thanks to Red's expert piloting. "We land fast, hit hard, and get out before they know what hit them," Kane instructed. When they touched down on the barren surface, the sight that greeted them was haunting. Thousands of slaves toiled under the harsh sun, their bodies gaunt from starvation, their eyes devoid of hope. Council enforcers, hulking, insect-like creatures, patrolled the work zones, cracking their energy whips to keep the workers in line. "Not for long," Mason muttered, gripping his blade. The team moved with precision, taking out the enforcers in swift, brutal strikes. Red disabled the drones with a few well-placed EMP charges, and Kane led the charge into the central command tower. A spark ignites. Inside the tower, the soldiers found the control room, where Council overseers monitored the colony. Kane didn't hesitate. He grabbed the lead overseer, a pale, multi-eyed alien, and slammed it against the wall. "Broadcast a message to the slaves," Kane ordered, his voice cold and unyielding. The alien trembled. "You'll never win. The Council will crush you." Kane's grip tightened. "The Council isn't here. I am." Minutes later, the colony's loudspeakers blared to life. "This is Commander Alex Kane of Earth's Resistance." His voice echoed across the desolate landscape. "The Council wants you to believe they're unstoppable. But today, we prove them wrong. Rise up. Fight back. Take your freedom." The slaves hesitated at first, but when the enforcers were overwhelmed, something shifted. A fire reignited in their eyes. They grabbed tools, weapons, anything they could use, and turned against their oppressors. Victory and a warning. The mission was a success. Varian 6 was freed, and its people vowed to join the fight. News of the rebellion spread across the galaxy, inspiring whispers of resistance on other worlds. But the victory came at a cost. As the team regrouped on their shuttle, Kara's expression remained grim. "What's wrong?" Red asked. Kara looked out the viewport, her eyes distant. "This is just the beginning. The Council won't let this go unanswered. They'll send everything they have to crush us." Kane stepped beside her, his gaze steady. Let them come. We'll be ready. Far away in the council's capital, the senior member watched the reports with cold fury. Prepare Project Eradicator, he commanded. If they want a war, we'll give them one they'll never forget. The resistance had struck its first blow, but the shadow of the council's ultimate weapon loomed closer. The galaxy stood on the brink of a war that would decide the fate of countless worlds, and humanity was at its center. Battle for freedom. The Resistance's victory on Varian 6 sent shockwaves across the galaxy. Whispered rumors of Earth's super soldiers grew into cries of rebellion on enslaved worlds. The Council's grip began to loosen, its colonies simmering with unrest. But as hope spread, so did the shadow of the Council's vengeance. The galaxy awakens. On the outer rim of the galaxy, resistance cells began to unite. Rebel leaders from distant planets gathered at a hidden base on a moon shrouded in perpetual darkness. Alex Kane stood at the center of the gathering, his commanding presence impossible to ignore. "You've seen what we can do," Kane said, his voice steady and powerful. "The Council isn't invincible. They want us to stay divided, afraid. But together, we are stronger than they ever imagined." A leader from the aquatic planet Zephyr raised a hand. "Your soldiers are impressive, Kane, but we don't have your strength. What can we do against the Council's warships and exterminators?" Kane leaned forward, his piercing eyes locking onto the leader. "It's not about matching their strength. It's about outthinking them. They don't expect us to fight as one. That's our advantage." Kara, still recovering but sharp as ever, stepped in. "The Council is terrified. That's why they've fast-tracked their ultimate weapon, Project Eradicator. If we don't act now, they'll use it to crush every rebellious planet in one strike." The room fell silent, the weight of her words sinking in. "So what's the plan?" a rebel leader from the desert planet Otrix asked. Kane smiled grimly. "We take the fight to them." The infiltration. The first step of the plan was to sabotage the Council's fleet before it could mobilize. Red led a team to infiltrate one of the Council's largest shipyards, hidden in the gaseous clouds of Nebula X7. Their stolen shuttle drifted through the swirling mist, its engines silent. Inside, the team prepared for the mission, their weapons gleaming in the dim light. "Remember," Red said, her voice low but commanding, "we're not here for a fight. Get in, plant the charges, and get out. If we're spotted, it's over." The team slipped past the shipyard's defenses, their movements ghost-like. Massive warships loomed above them, their hulls gleaming under the shipyard's lights. Red led her team through narrow corridors, disabling patrols with silent precision. At the heart of the shipyard, they found the energy cores that powered the fleet. Red set the final charge, her fingers steady despite the ticking clock. "Time to go," she whispered. The team retreated just as the charges detonated, a series of explosions ripping through the shipyard. The warships crumbled, their once mighty forms reduced to flaming wreckage. The Council strikes back. The destruction of the shipyard enraged the Galactic Council. In the Grand Chamber, the senior member's voice thundered. "They dare strike at our heart. Then we shall strike at theirs. Deploy the Dreadnought." The Dreadnought was the Council's most fearsome weapon, a colossal warship equipped with planet-destroying capabilities. Its arrival in Earth's orbit was heralded by a blinding flash of light, its shadow engulfing the land below. Resistance bases scrambled to respond, but the Dreadnought's sheer power overwhelmed them. Plasma beams rained down, reducing entire mountains to ash. Kane watched the destruction from the mountain base, his jaw clenched. "We can't win this by hiding. It's time for a direct assault." The assault on the Dreadnought. The super soldiers and their allies launched a daring strike against the Dreadnought. Using a fleet of stolen ships, they pierced through the Council's defenses, their maneuvers fast and unpredictable. As they approached the Dreadnought, anti-aircraft cannons lit up the sky, forcing the resistance pilots into dangerous dives and sharp turns. Kane's shuttle led the charge, weaving through the chaos. "Brace for impact," he shouted as the shuttle landed hard on the dreadnought's surface. The team breached the hull, their boots echoing on the cold, metallic floors. Inside, the ship was a maze of corridors, each one guarded by the Council's elite soldiers. Mason grinned as he drew his blade. This is more like it. The super soldiers tore through the opposition, their movements a deadly dance of precision and power. Kane led them toward the dreadnought's control center, where they encountered the ship's commander, a towering alien encased in gleaming armor. "You think you can stop us?" The commander sneered, its voice distorted through its helmet. Kane raised his rifle. "I don't think. I know." The battle was fierce, but the super soldiers' unity and skill turned the tide. Mason delivered the final blow, his blade piercing the commander's chest. The cost of victory. As the dreadnought's systems faltered, Kane and his team planted explosives in its reactor core. The countdown began, and they raced back to their shuttle. 10 seconds, Red shouted as they boarded, the ship's engines roaring to life. The shuttle shot out of the dreadnought just as the explosions tore through its structure. The massive ship disintegrated, its fragments raining down like falling stars. The Resistance's fleet cheered, but Kane's face remained grim. "This isn't over," he said. "The Council still has Project Eradicator, the galaxy's turning point." News of the dreadnought's destruction spread quickly. Across the galaxy, enslaved worlds rose up, their people inspired by the Resistance's defiance. In the Council's capital, the senior member watched the chaos unfold, his expression dark. "They think they've won a victory," he muttered, "but we have one final move to make." He turned to a shadowy figure at his side. "Activate Project Eradicator. Let the galaxy see what happens when they defy us." The final battle was on the horizon, and the Resistance knew it would decide the fate of not just Earth, but the entire galaxy. Humanity's fight was no longer about survival, it was about hope. Rise of the Forgotten. The destruction of the dreadnought had sent a message to the galaxy. The Galactic Council was not invincible. On countless enslaved worlds, whispers turned into roars of rebellion. But the Council still held one final card, Project Eradicator. Far from prying eyes, in the heart of the Council's capital, the colossal weapon awaited activation. Built deep within a fortress carved into a moon of solid obsidian, the Eradicator was no mere weapon. It was a planet killer, capable of annihilating entire systems in a single strike. The countdown to its activation had begun. The Resistance's last stand. At the hidden Resistance base on Earth, Kane gathered his soldiers and the leaders of the allied planets. Kara, still weak but resolute, sat beside him. A holographic map of the Council's fortress glowed in the center of the room. "The Council will use the Eradicator to crush every rebellious planet," Kara said. "If they succeed, it's over. For all of us." Kane's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "This is our only chance. We hit the fortress, destroy the Eradicator, and take out the Council's leadership. If we succeed, the galaxy will be free. If we fail..." He let the silence speak for itself. Red stood, her voice defiant. "We won't fail. We've come too far to stop now." Mason smirked. "Besides, I'm not letting those Council cowards win after all this. Let's end this." Infiltration under fire. The Resistance's fleet launched into hyperspace, their ships moving as one. They emerged near the Council's capital moon, greeted immediately by a wall of enemy warships. "Here they come," Marcus muttered from the cockpit of his stolen Council cruiser. Kane's voice crackled over the comms. "Stick to the plan. Fighters, engage the fleet. Infiltration teams, follow me." The Resistance's fighters swarmed the Council's ships, their movements unpredictable and precise. Explosions lit up the void, but the Resistance pressed on, determined to break through. Kane's team breached the moon's surface, landing amidst heavy fire. The fortress loomed before them, its obsidian walls shimmering with an eerie, unnatural light. "Move fast," Kane ordered as they charged forward. Inside the fortress, The fortress was a labyrinth of cold, black corridors, filled with traps and council enforcers. The super soldiers led the way, their combat skills unmatched. Mason grinned as he deflected a plasma shot with his blade. "This place is cozy. I could almost live here." "Focus, Mason," Red snapped, taking out an enforcer with a clean shot. As they moved deeper into the fortress, Kara directed them toward the Eradicator's control center. "It's heavily guarded," she warned. "They'll throw everything they have at us." "Let them," Kane said. "The battle for the galaxy." When they reached the control center, they found the Eradicator, a massive glowing sphere suspended in a chamber the size of a city. Dozens of council troops surrounded it, their weapons trained on the resistance fighters. The senior council member stepped forward, his elongated form draped in ceremonial armor. "Fools," he hissed. "You think you can stop us? The Eradicator is already charged. Your pathetic rebellion ends here." Kane raised his rifle. "You talk too much." The room erupted into chaos. The super soldiers fought with deadly precision, their movements a blur of strength and strategy. Red provided cover fire, her shots taking down enemies before they could react. Mason tore through the ranks with his blade, his grin never fading. Kara worked furiously at a console, trying to override the Eradicator's systems. "I need more time," she shouted. "You'll get it," Kane replied, taking down an enforcer that had been aiming for her. The final sacrifice. As the battle raged, the Eradicator began to pulse with dangerous energy. "We're out of time," Kara cried. "If this thing fires, it'll destroy everything in 1,000 light-year radius." Kane looked at the glowing sphere, his mind racing. Then his eyes settled on Kara. "Can you overload it?" Kara hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, but it'll destroy the entire fortress." "Do it," Kane said without hesitation. Red's voice broke through the comms. "Kane, we're still inside." Kane turned to his team. "Get everyone out. Now." "What about you?" Mason asked, his grin fading. "I'll finish this," Kane said. The explosion. Kara triggered the overload, the Eradicator's energy surging wildly. The fortress shook violently as the resistance fighters raced to their ships. Kane stayed behind, fighting off the remaining enforcers to buy time. As the Eradicator's core reached critical mass, he glanced at the sky, a faint smile on his face. "Earth always rises," he whispered. The fortress erupted in a massive explosion, a blinding light consuming the moon and the Council's greatest weapon. A new dawn. The resistance fleet emerged from the chaos, battered but victorious. On countless planets, people celebrated as news of the Council's defeat spread. Kara stood on the deck of the flagship, staring out at the stars. "He did it," she said softly. Red placed a hand on her shoulder. "We all did." Legacy of the Forgotten. Months later, a new alliance of free worlds was formed. Earth, once a forgotten and enslaved planet, stood at its center, a beacon of hope and resilience. Statues of Alex Kane and the super soldiers were erected across the galaxy, their names etched into history. But for those who had fought beside them, their legacy was more than monuments. It was the freedom they had won for all. As Mason leaned against a railing, watching the celebrations, he smirked. "You think Kane would have liked all this fanfare?" Red chuckled. "He'd hate it, but he earned it." Kara looked at the stars, her voice steady. "The Council thought they could break us. They forgot one thing about humans." "What's that?" Mason asked. Kara smiled. "We never stop fighting." And with that, humanity's rise became the galaxy's greatest story of hope and freedom.